News in the NBA does not sleep. We are very excited about that fact because, well, we do a weekly podcast that talks about the NBA. So we're having a lot of fun. Like a lot of NBA teams dealing with injuries and players being out, the Drive and Dish is no exception to that right now. Kevin is out for the week. Chase joining us on this episode. Now, Chase, you do a podcast called
Yes.
Bunker's Burning Hot Takes. Is it specifically NBA takes or is it just overall sports stuff? Like how's that go?
Pretty much it's just anybody, like any
Okay.
sport, anything. I could fake it, maybe do some cricket, who knows? Maybe do some esports. I can tell
Yeah.
you about how G2's team in Counter-Strike is really good,
Okay.
or how their League of Legends team is going to win MSI. No one
Okay.
cares about that because everyone hates esports if you watch mainstream. But yeah, I could talk about almost any sport.
Okay, awesome. So yeah, if you have a chance, Bunker's Burning Hot Takes, easy for me to say. You can find it on any podcasting platform. Now, the kind of outline of the Drive and Dish show today, a lot of coaching stuff that we're going to get into. That's going to be our warm up, and then like I just referenced, a lot of injury news too. So that's going to be kind of our next vibe. We'll obviously do Ballin' and Fallin', and then we'll get into some last kind of playoff observation thoughts. And things like that. So without further ado, let's get into the coaching situation. The big news this week in between our last episode and this one was the Hornets moving on from James Borrego, coached the Hornets since 2018. He was 138 and 163 in his time there, though I feel like that doesn't necessarily tell the full story. I thought there were positive vibes coming out of Charlotte with their coaching. Like, I don't think coaching was the problem if there was a problem. Obviously, they haven't made the playoffs since 2015, 2016, but the past 2 years, they've made the play-in tournament, obviously getting bounced in the play-in tournament. But I feel like for a young team, there was still a lot of excitement and positive momentum. They won 43 games this year. That was 10th place in the Eastern Conference and then getting bounced by the Hawks, like I was saying. They posted the highest offensive rating in franchise history. They finished 8th overall in the NBA this season. Defensively is where the problems were. They were 22nd in defense in the league. So I feel like maybe that would be where the gripe is. Like, we didn't see much of improvement from the defensive side. And I know players on the Hornets said it was playoffs or bust this year, and so it would be disappointing if they didn't. But, I mean, 43 games is pretty damn good for a team this young and this going through a weird situation where you have a lot of younger players and then some older, like, veteran players, you know?
Mm-hmm. It definitely didn't seem to make any sense just because it seemed like the Charlotte Hornets, like you said, were trending upward. Like LaMelo Ball was in his second year. He was
Yep.
still doing fairly well. You just drafted James Bouknight and you still had Scary Terry. And like the fact still stands, just like, is there anything more Charlotte Hornets than just going through coaches every 4 years? Like,
Right.
I just looked at this and I just thought, oh, cool. LaMelo Ball's now the new Kemba Walker. Like, he's going to be this great superstar talent whose franchise is going to hinder him because of this. I don't know if this is a Michael Jordan move or if this is somebody that's like just below him, like the director of basketball operations or whatever. But it just doesn't make any sense. Like, you have a team that you say you want to win now, but at the same time, it's like, look at who's there. It's like, you're
Right.
clearly not there yet, but you're trending upwards. So why ruin a good thing? And the thing is, I can't think of who they would get right now that would help keep them in the same direction.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Immediately after this, Lake Show Life, which I think is FanSided's Lakers website, they immediately put out an article that's like James Borrego should be immediately on a short list of head coaches for the Lakers. Now, the Lakers are a whole different situation, and that's another coaching situation we can talk about. But I feel like if there's other fan bases that are immediately like, this guy should be on our list of people we might want, he's great at developing talent. He's already kind of showed that with the younger guys. From the Lakers standpoint, I'm not sure if that's the problem. Like, I don't know if you have to develop the young guy talent. I mean, I get it. The depth.
Is there
and
young
stuff,
guy talent? Like,
that's my point.
Who's the
yeah.
young guy? Russell Westbrook? Like, who?
I mean, maybe he's got the secret sauce. You know what I'm saying? Like, maybe there's some secret sauce there somewhere, but I don't see it. But from like the Hornet side of things, you didn't have Gordon Hayward for a good chunk of games, maybe there's an argument to be made that if he was there, they win a few more and they're not in the play-in tournament, or they do win that play-in tournament game, and they're the ones that go up against the Heat. So I, it just felt quick. And my first thought when I saw it was maybe there was something behind the scenes where the players weren't vibing with him for whatever reason, although it's come out that he's a great developmental coach. So I don't know if that's the case, but kind of what you were saying, it feels like there was a gripe, there was something. There's a part of the story we're not getting, because
Yes.
it seems like social media, all the blogs were like, why did we do this? And like your point with the coaching changes. I mean, the Kings are another franchise that you would put in that category of just so many head coaching changes, and you see how bad it can be for a player's development, especially a young guy like Ball. Like, you don't want to do that to them.
Well, also,
So
let's not forget that they did this to Steve Clifford
mhm,
4 years ago. And we're like, wait, you guys were just in the playoffs with this guy,
yeah,
and now you're firing him. And so it's this weird rotation of, oh, hey, we're trending upward. Let's get a new
move
guy.
on. Yeah. So hopefully there's something to it. I mean, I like you said, there's not necessarily a coaching list of people that I think would be like an immediate upgrade from Borrego. You might be able to say they'd be on the same wavelength, but then again, it's like, well, then what was the point of the change? Why shake it up? Um, so you know, it's a head scratching move. I feel like there might be stories down the line as to why or what happened. At least a little more insight, hopefully. Um, but on to the Sacramento Kings, like we were talking about, they've already moved on from their coach, but they did get permission to interview a ton of assistant coaches, some assistant coaches from Golden State. We got Brooklyn on the list. I believe there's two from Milwaukee, another from Boston. They're apparently already talking to Mark Jackson and Mike D'Antoni. So, I mean, I don't know. At this point with the Kings, I'm just kind of on the level of anybody that can build around Sabonis and De'Aaron Fox, really just put them in, you know? And I'm not going to believe it until we see it.
I just don't know what to think of the Kings. Like, the Kings are one of the few franchises I don't allow them to clown the Orlando Magic.
Yes.
It's like,
Well,
dude,
that's
like,
we should say that, Chase. You are an Orlando like diehard Orlando Magic fan, would you say?
I would say diehard. I've been a
Okay.
fan since '89, so I feel like I've reached
Yeah.
the
That's for
status
sure.
of diehard. I don't know if I reached the threshold. Then
I think
again,
that
it's like,
counts.
then
You've
again,
stuck around with the Magic for a really long time, and they haven't been the
yes.
best, so sure, I think it
Oh
counts.
God, it's so depressing. But then again, like, no other fan would be like, I've been a fan since '87. It's like, well, you're a liar.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so it's the Sacramento Kings as a whole. It's just a dumpster fire of an organization. Like, I don't think that a coaching is going to solve them. I think they just need to do a full clean house. Now, granted, I feel like they've made some progress this year. They got Sabonis to join them. De'Aaron
Mhm.
Fox is obviously great. I just don't know who you're gonna get. Like, the problem with assistant coaches, and this is probably me just probably saying a little bit too much. I don't know if they're gonna be good. Like, it's not like it's football where you can look at an offensive coordinator. It's like, yeah, this offense was number one. It's like, all right, cool, understandable. With assistant coaches, I feel like sometimes it's just a crapshoot. Like,
I
you're
think
gonna get
yes.
Willie Green. Willie Green's great. Like, look what he's doing for New Orleans. You know, they're Ime Udoka. Look at him,
Sure.
Jamal Mosley. But then he's like, then you have Luke Walton. It's like, all right, he was an assistant. He was great over at Golden State. Well,
Yeah, and I think there are outliers and stuff. Like there could be a situation like if like David Fitzdale, right? Like you like he was a head coach, so we have an idea of what he might be able to do. And then now now he's an assistant and doing what he's doing now. But I think there is a level of what you're saying where if it's a first time head coaching position for an assistant coach, it's hard to kind of say like you can come in with all the accolades you want. You're a great assistant development coach. Like you were the development guy, which is fine, but like we just haven't seen you do it as a head coach. And there's a lot more responsibilities that come with it. So I get what you're saying with that. And I just again, I think at this point, like Borrego, we talked about him. maybe a good fit for the Kings from the standpoint of development. If you like,
Mhm.
you got younger guys in there, you're trying to build around Sabonis and De'Aaron Fox, like maybe there is a developmental coach side of things that they would want to consider. So I don't know if that's the way they go or how that works out, but
I think
that
Borrego is actually a perfect candidate for that just because we've seen him develop talent before.
mhm,
I mean, Charlotte went through a massive dip, and then all of a sudden you see LaMelo Ball take the next step and all that. So I think you could see Sacramento be a great fit for him. I mean, Mike D'Antoni, you already said it before. I feel like you could
mhm.
just throw him in any system, and it's like, yeah, sure, I think that could be good.
Sure, why
Uh,
not? Yeah.
yeah, I can't think of anybody else. I, I feel like we usually say, oh yeah, Luke Walton because we always throw him in the mix, but then again, oh wait, we
He was
can't
the
throw
one.
him in there.
Yeah.
So
I don't yeah, I'm wondering to see what happens for him going forward. And then, with Luke Walton and the Lakers and all that, they're another team that's going through uh, coaching change. Recently on a podcast, Shaq said that he would coach. I think he said it jokingly, honestly, like the
mhm.
way that it came off and the money that he would say he would want. But he said if they offered me 25 million a year for 4 years, I would coach. Um, from where the Lakers are standpoint wise, I don't know necessarily if that's like the
You
coaching
know what? I'll
direction that
make
you
the
should
offer
go.
now. I'm gonna undercut him. Lakers, I'll do it for 4 years, 24 million,
I'll
and
do
we'll
it
get
for
better
you
results.
give me 25 million period and I will do it for 4 years. Like I don't need it. I don't need 25 million a year. You just give me
Yeah,
25 mil and and we're good.
I'll undercut you. I'll do it for 3 years. We'll do it for 3 years,
Yeah.
and
Give me 2 million and I'm in. You can
yeah,
keep me as long as you want. But do you like the idea of like a Shaq or a Lakers legend like that coaching? Now, I think it's different if it's not like because we just had LeBron come out last night and say he's never missing the postseason ever again, which can feel about that how you feel.
okay.
Um, right. So, it's one of those things where I don't feel like the Lakers are in a spot to bring in a somebody without head coaching experience already. I guess is kind of my thought process.
Yes, like that's when you bring in Ty Lue no matter what. Like you should have brought in Ty Lue in the first place, to be honest.
Mhm.
It's this isn't there's rookie jobs and then there's we need the experience and we need the talent. And this is definitely like if you were to fire like James Borrego, going back to that topic for the experienced head coach, like there's a difference between Charlotte and there's a difference between the Lakers. Like
Mhm.
Lakers are in win now mode, and yeah, you can't just bring in some rookie. And like they did this with Magic Johnson. He only coached for like what 10 games, and then he
Mhm.
fled the premises. I don't know who you get now. I am for former players who coached because we're seeing a lot more success with
Well, and
that.
I would say like the counter to our argument would be Jason Kidd a little bit, right? With the Mavericks, like there's some success there, and he's a relatively new quote unquote coach. Um, so I feel like there are counters to it, but I would say if you were, we'd have to do this. Like we'd have to go back and look at all the years that a former player, now rookie head coach, and what their
Hmm.
success rate was for this season. Like, was it good? Is it more likely to lean bad, or is it more likely to lean good? Without looking at the numbers, I think I would guess bad, and maybe I'm
Right.
wrong on that, and I hope I'm wrong on that. But I would be willing to guess that it leans bad.
Well, Jason Kidd has a very weird career, pretty much. Like, because remember, he had the Nets, and like that was
Yeah.
a bit of a failure. Then he goes to the Bucks,
Hmm.
kind of brings them on the rise, and
Yeah.
then they axe him, and then he goes to Los Angeles. I think it was one of those. Somebody said it. I forget who it was. They said it yesterday. Jason Kidd benefited from being behind the clipboard. And I
Hmm.
think once he had the clipboard experience, that's why
Then he
we're
knew.
seeing Dallas succeed now. That's why we're seeing Dallas without Luka Doncic doing well in a playoff series.
And that's something like kind of teasing towards the end of the episode, I think we'll bring up in our kind of postseason last observations because yeah, I think I want to bring up the Jazz, I want to bring up the Mavericks and talk about that a little bit because it's not a good look for the Jazz if you can't beat a Luka-less Mavericks because I feel like there's an argument, and I might have said this last episode, but I feel like there's an argument to make that with Luka off the court, the Jazz have the next two best players on paper. And so, you know, in that case, you're not playing up to your expectations, and that's not a good sign. So, a lot of coaching stuff going on. I think it's just going to keep getting crazier and crazier, obviously, as we get into the off season. And so it'll be something that we will obviously continue talking about here on the Drive and Dish NBA podcast. So you can obviously subscribe and follow along with us. We do a video version of the podcast now. We put it up on YouTube. Yeah, so you can see what Chase looks like.
You don't have to do that.
You're wearing an Orlando Magic shirt, so I guess for the podcasters listening, they wouldn't have known you were an Orlando fan until we said it. But if you're watching the video, you would have seen it. But either way, Kevin will be back. Actually, a little programming note, because now that I'm thinking about it, I will not be here unless we record in the middle of the week.
Am I filling in for you next week?
At this point, you might. I don't know. Because I'm going to Jamaica, dude. I cannot think of a better place to go to watch the NBA Finals. An all-inclusive resort with NBA just on all the time. It's going to be so great. I'm so pumped about it. So
are you going with your wife, or are you just going like on a guy's trip?
I am going with my wife, so she probably won't appreciate the basketball being on as much as I will.
Good luck watching.
Exactly.
You ain't watching anything.
Exactly. So thank you again for listening to the podcast. Subscribe so you get updated when we put out new episodes. Follow and subscribe on YouTube so you can watch the video versions of the podcast. We want to take a second to say thank you to DraftKings. These guys teaming up with us. We're really excited about it, and sports betting is huge right now. So if you want to get in on the first round of action with DraftKings Sportsbook, it's the official sports betting partner of the NBA. This week, new customers can get $5 on any team, and $5 on any team to win. And if you get it, you get $150 free in instant bets instantly. So all DraftKings Sportsbooks customers get NBA hoops. You can also bet on same game parlays, which is like kind of my go-to. I really enjoy doing that. You can combine multiple bets from the same game for bigger payouts. Obviously, you know how sports betting works. Plus, each day of the first round, you can get a risk-free bet up to $10 if your same game parlay does not hit. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use the promo code DISHERS, DISHERS. Get it, driving Dishers. Bet $5 on any NBA team to win their game during the first round of the playoffs, and you get $150 in free bets instantly. That's promo code DISHERS at DraftKings Sportsbook. It's an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Obviously, minimum age and eligibility restrictions will apply. But to that, we were talking about this kind of a second ago. If you had to put $100, $100 on any team right now to win the NBA Finals, what team are you putting it on?
I right now want to say the Golden State Warriors.
Okay.
Because this team, with a very limited Steph Curry, they're somehow doing this with Jordan Poole. Which if I say, one player is stepping up without Curry, they go, it's Klay Thompson. No. Draymond Green. No. Kayvon Looney, I don't think it's a part of the team anymore. So you say Jordan Poole, people will just go, wait, who is that guy?
Who is that?
Wait, that guy from Michigan 4 years ago? Like, yeah, I think so. It's like the fact that they're doing this is astonishing. Like, that's the fact that he's putting up that many numbers shows like how deep that team really is.
Well, and I will say it's insane to me that nobody saw this coming, right? Yeah. A team of the Splash Brothers add a player named Jordan Poole, another body of water, and when nobody saw it coming. Come on, it was written right there in front of us.
I hate that I didn't know that until now. I hate that.
But to that, in the playoffs, I mean, they are significantly averaging more points per game than really every other team. I mean, they're at 122.3 points per game. The next closest is the Sixers at 115. And I know it's just, it's matchups and stuff, but they are cooking.
Yeah, they're destroying. Like they're making Jokic look like why is he an MVP candidate? Like,
There's a lot of that going on right now as a Sixers fan. I see a whole
yeah,
lot of those tweets.
yeah. And so, like, just to see them do that, and so I look at them and it's like, okay, who do they have to face next? Memphis. Memphis has been up and down, and then we don't know like if uh Phoenix is going to survive the next series because I still think they're going to still win after we talk about the injuries because they're
Mhm.
going to be hampered by the Devin Booker tease, and so I think of all the teams, like Golden State just looks really good. And the scariest thing is when Golden State can start hitting all their shots, and when it's not just Steph Curry and it's not just Klay Thompson and it's somebody else, whether it be Andrew Wiggins, whether it be Jordan Poole or anybody else, that's when it gets scary.
I agree, and that really opens things up. So with that, to your point, like you just said, Golden State, I think easily going into the playoffs before injuries,
Hmm.
I think a lot of people would say the Suns, but there
Yes.
have been so many injuries now, and not just to the Suns. There's been a lot of injuries. So let's start with the Suns because I think they're the
Hmm.
ones that take at least the biggest hit because of name power and star
Hmm.
power and how important he is to the team. Devin Booker is going to miss the remainder of the first round. He went down with a hamstring injury in game 2, which the Pelicans won that game. Which so I to that point though, I would say Phoenix is prepared for this because we've seen them play without stars throughout the regular season. Booker missed a few games. I think it was 14, if I'm not mistaken. And Chris Paul missed 17 games. I know Aiton was out for a while too. So this is nothing new to them, right?
Right.
Playing down. So from a are they going to lose to the Pelicans thing, I think we just stop that conversation right now. I'm not worried about that. Um, and so it does suck to see him go down, and hopefully he can come back and not be hindered by it for the rest of the playoffs. Because, like you said, once we get past the Pelicans and we start seeing other matchups and how it may land up or lay out, that is where I start getting a little worried as to if the injury lingers or if we're still there. I think the next best lineup I was reading on SB Nation, they were saying the lineup of Paul, Shamit, Bridges, Crowder, and Aiton. They've only played 116 minutes together, but they post a 7.6 net rating and an elite. They bolded elite.
Hmm.
99.6 defensive efficiency.
Yeah.
So that's probably what they'll roll with. At least test that lineup out a little bit more.
Yes, and I
Um,
think also another thing is that the next matchup is going to be the 4-5, which is going
mhm,
to be either Mavericks or the Jazz, and I think there's still a good possibility that that series goes 7, which is probably going to benefit the
prefer
Suns
that.
more than
Yeah.
anything. And it's not just because of like rest or anything; it's just it's extending the
Yeah,
time.
you would
So,
prefer that. If you're the Suns, you want that to go 7, and
mhm.
you want it to go 7, and then honestly, if you're being super picky, you'd probably hope it's the Mavericks that win and Luka's still not good to play.
Yes,
That's probably your, like, path of least resistance in a way. I
yes,
think that's what you're hoping for if you're a Suns fan. Not that you want Luka to be injured or anything like that, you just hope he's not back. They win in 7, so everybody's
hmm.
tired, and then you come in and you can kinda
Well,
roll it
also,
out, and maybe if you go up quick 2-0 on them, 2-0 in the series on them, Booker can rest more, and there's no urgency to bring him back and risk of re-injury.
well, you also want the Mavericks because they don't really have the better big man. I mean, of the two, I think we all
True.
agree that Rudy Gobert is the better big man. And so what that will also enable is DeAndre Ayton to kind of thrive because what we saw last year with the playoffs was DeAndre Ayton did great against semi like meh bigs. And so
Mhm.
when you have a meh big on Ayton, you have to say it like that too, by the
Yeah,
way.
yeah.
When you have a semi meh big on him, like that's gonna again, like you said, allow Devin Booker to rest, and you have another means of scoring, and it's a lot less pressure on everybody else.
I agree. So, the other injury that actually came down last night, Kyle Lowry suffered a hamstring injury. This happened last night, so there's not a ton of information. He's going through further evaluation today. Uh, he seemed pretty upset that he wasn't back in the game at the end of the game. Heat trainers, said it was best for him to sit out. Um, in the interview afterward, he was mad about it, but I think, when you saw him walking away, there was a limp, so it makes sense. He's going through round the clock treatment. He said in the interview that he's Wolverine and that he's going to play in game 4. So we'll see where that goes down the line. Kind of like fingers crossed is not worse than we're thinking it is right now.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's probably, does he hurt it from carrying around that fat butt of his the entire time? Like, Kyle Lowry, one, dirty player. Still haven't forgotten what he did to Aaron Gordon. Two, he has to be the thickest guy in the NBA, like THI thick, right?
I mean, I guess you're not wrong, but I think he's one of those guys that, like, when you look at the Heat, I think maybe the first two people you're obviously worried about, Jimmy Butler and Bam.
Yes.
But Kyle Lowry is a big part of that offense.
Yeah, he is. But I think if you're the Miami Heat, one of the things you keep praising is your depth. Like you've been getting games from Gabe Vincent, you've been getting it from Max Strus, Duncan Robinson. You keep finding all of this talent. And so if you're gonna brag about that, that's when they need to step up. And so like there still should have been no reason the Atlanta Hawks should have won that game. Like if you are the best defensive team and you like to praise your depth, that's where you're supposed to be doing it. Like, and I want to say Kyle Lowry is important, but at the same time, they've got the pieces. I still think they're going to win the series. And I mean, when you have to get to Heat in 5 with a loss. So,
well, and that's the thing is I was, it was a close game, obviously, but I was surprised that the Hawks won that one, even with Lowry going down. I mean, I think it was the Heat held the Hawks to 16 points in the third. Like that to me, I was like, all right, no doubter they're winning this. And then obviously the Hawks had themselves a fourth quarter. So I'm kind of with you. I think maybe it was one of those things, maybe it rattled them a little with a guy going down, but the Heat's thing is depth. I mean, they've got players, they've got that depth. So I don't think something like this, if Lowry can't play for whatever reason, hinders them with the Hawks. Maybe it's a problem later on down the line. I know hamstring injuries can be nagging and not necessarily go away, but I don't want to give it more than it is before we know what it is, essentially.
Right.
So the other team dealing with injuries, essentially all of them, it is the playoffs, I get it, but the Bucks, they are currently leading the Bulls 2-1 in the series, but Chris Middleton suffered an MCL sprain. That was during their loss to the Bulls, their only loss of the series to the Bulls. They had a bounce back last night for us. He is definitely out for the rest of the series. We'll see what happens. I mean, Middleton, obviously a huge part of their depth for a team that does not have a ton of depth. In that same game, it's worth mentioning that Bobby Portis also took a shot to the eye. I think he's gonna be all right. But it wasn't great.
Yeah, it was nasty.
But it's worth pointing out, Chris Middleton was a member of 9 of the 10 most used Bucks lineups. So that is where it shows the depth problem. Their 8th most used lineup is the first one without Middleton in it, and that is Holiday, Giannis, Bobby Portis, and Grayson Allen and Pat Connaughton. So, I don't know how I feel about that lineup out there. That lineup, by the way, has only played 50 minutes together, and it posts a -8 net rating.
I cringe anytime I hear a lineup with Grayson Allen in it. And I'm saying this as a Duke fan where it's like, oh,
You don't
Grayson
like
Allen's
Allen?
I mean, what is he good for besides like cheap shotting somebody?
Well,
Like,
I feel like and this might be severely, I don't know who this might be a dig at, and I don't mean it to be a dig, but he kind of just gives me like he's like like Kyle Korver vibes, like he's out there for a three or and to defend a little bit,
I mean, Kyle Korver is like he was the 3 guy. He was
Yeah.
the white guy who shoots threes over in the corner. Like Grayson Allen, I think still leads the league in punchable faces. Like
Well, definitely.
anytime Grayson Allen comes on the floor, I'm just like, oh, who's gonna hit him now? Like someone's gonna like just deck him for some reason. I think the big thing, like you were mentioning, going back to the point, Chris Middleton being out is big. Like Chris Middleton was a good reason of why the Bucks won the
Mhm.
finals last year. You could say Giannis, and which, yes, you are technically correct, but a lot of that also became from Chris Middleton. Chris Middleton was
Mhm.
a great support system. And so I think right now, the Drew Holiday trade helped you win the finals because you had a third person. Now we're going to
Sure.
see how great that Drew Holiday trade was when he's now the number 2 guy, essentially.
And I'll say, from at least the last game against Milwaukee, Grayson Allen, from a point production standpoint, hasn't been great until last night. Was it the 22nd? Yeah, 22nd. So, I mean, that he shot 71% from three. He was 5 for 7. So, and
I
had 6 rebounds. So if you can get that out of Grayson Allen, like, that's
I
your
mean,
move.
yeah. I mean, is that like it's like the oh, who was it? That's like the Shane Battier game in the finals
Mhm.
where it's like, okay, here's one person like just has a great game, and then after that, blah,
Yeah, and I think if you're the Bulls, you if
burn that
Grayson
tape.
Allen if Grayson Allen's the one that beats you, then that's just how it is. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
like
Like,
there's nothing you can do. It's like, oh,
yeah,
great, who made that? Grayson Allen.
you
Yeah,
let it happen. But,
yeah.
dang, if he I mean, that's a heat check, a momentum check. I
Mhm.
mean, in 24 minutes, dropping 22.6 rebounds and shooting 71% from 3, you'd imagine that would come back down to earth, but if that continues, then we're vibing. So,
Yeah.
from the 76ers side, this just coming out the other night, Embiid, a possible torn ligament in the thumb. Status is, quote, try to play through the pain. So, I mean,
That's
you get,
always Embiid. That's
yeah.
always Embiid. It's like, hey, you have a torn Achilles. I'll try to fight through it.
And I think it's one, like, I don't think we need to go down the line of how important Embiid is for the Sixers. We just saw him hit that turnaround three, which I'm just going to point out. In the fourth quarter, he did the same thing, and everyone on social media was like, "I hate that shot for Embiid. That was a horrible shot. I hate it." And then in overtime, he hits it, and everyone's like, "Oh my god, a 7-footer that can do that!" And I was like, "Wait again, you guys were just hating on him for doing this no more than 10 minutes ago."
I mean, Twitter is French for hypocrisy. Like,
That's
that's what
true,
it is. Like, yeah, like we'll hate it until it actually works for us, and then we
right?
think it's the greatest thing out there. Yeah, Embiid's a big, like that one's big. But I think when he said he's gonna fight through it, it pretty much means, yeah, we're gonna sweep Toronto, and then we're just gonna rest from here on out. Like
Well,
that's what it
yeah,
pretty much is.
yeah, and I didn't look this up. I should have. Which hand, which part of the shooting hand is the
I
thumb?
don't think it was the shooting hand. I think it was if unless I'm confusing my hand injuries, I think it was it's not the trigger hand, it was the setting hand.
Which again, I guess is lesser of the two evils, if
Mhm.
you're going to have that. So, um, again, I think he's probably him and Booker, I mean, would be same level of extreme injury. Now, the Suns are more suited to deal with an injury to their star. The
Yes.
Sixers are not. And I don't think
No,
anybody is going to argue that.
no, you're gonna have to rely on Tobias Harris, and as an Orlando Magic fan, that's not a good thing.
Yeah, you don't want to. Although I will say Tobias has been playing good in the playoffs. His defense has been decent. He did miss that shot, or I guess put back. Technically, I think he got fouled at the
Mhm.
end of that game. That Embiid hit the overtime game winner. But before it went to overtime, Tobias had a chance to put it back, and I mean it looked like it was going to go, and I'm pretty sure he got fouled. But I get it. The refs swallow their whistles. It's what it is.
How many times though, as a Sixers fan, how many times have you said, Tobias has been good until like the series that you need him, and he's
When
just been awful.
when my conversations with my Philly friends go, it's amazing that Tobias is playing well. Hopefully, this playoff series raises his trade value. That kind of tells you where we're at with him. Like, it's not that I don't think he's a good player. It's the money that he's getting doesn't equal what
Yes.
he's doing. So that's where that frustration comes from.
Mhm.
So, uh,
Magic legend.
yes, from a more positive side of injury news, we take it over to the Celtics Nets series. It is reported that Robert Williams III, who suffered the torn meniscus, which was, I guess, a few months ago at this point,
Mhm.
um, he is apparently going to be coming back for game 3. Boston is already up 2-0. So that's huge for Boston.
Mhm.
part of me is like, well, if you're already up 2-0, don't rush it if you don't think he's fully ready. But I also get it's the Nets and it's Kevin Durant, it's Kyrie, so you have to strike while the iron's hot. Now, on the other side of things, the Nets are talking about Ben Simmons coming back for game 4, not game 3, game 4. What is the difference between a few days? I don't know. And if Ben Simmons is coming back, I feel like there's an argument to be made. If you've already decided that he is coming back and you are going to figure out the chemistry issues in the playoff game, why are you waiting till potentially the very last one? Why not have him come back in game 3 so at least there's 2 games so that you're not figuring it out with the literal season on the line potentially?
Yeah, it's a 2-day difference. Like they
Right.
play like
What is 2 days do?
I don't understand where it's like, oh, I woke up, I felt horrible, and then 2 days later, oh, I just feel great. I could go take on the world now. Like I don't understand that rationale. Like it's not like it was the flu that he had. He had like what was it, like a knee problem, back problem?
I
I don't
think
know.
back.
He's
Yeah.
always hurt, really. But
Mhm.
yeah, I thought he hurt his back from carrying the entire NBA offseason, but that
Well,
apparently was much more than that. It,
he
it's
he
it.
what I'm like from a net side of things, bringing him in,
Mhm.
like I get it. Put him on Tatum, shut him down. Like
Yes.
just tell Ben Simmons, do not let him score or just shut him down and let everybody else do their thing from the net side of things. I get it. But the part like we were just saying, the part I'm having trouble with is why is it game 4 and not game 3? And why not get 2 games out of it? Because then you can potentially get 2 wins and then we're
You
tied
can get,
up.
especially since like you're the average margin, like you lost by 1
Right.
in game 1. You lost by 7 in game 2, and you still could have easily
Yeah.
won that game. And so I don't understand what the like I don't I know you're thinking maybe future, but at the same time, like what
Well,
future really?
and that's my point is if you're going to give me the argument of why bring him in at all, I'm on board with you. I agree. I don't think
Mhm.
it makes sense. But if you have already committed to he is healthy enough to play, he's coming in
Mhm.
game 4, what does 2 days do?
Yeah,
And that's my beef with it. But
exactly.
again, this is coming from a Sixers fan who's kind of still a little petty. I'll admit it. I'm still petty. I don't get the rationale there. I I was reading something the Celtics are like 40-1 when they go up 2-0 in a series in a 7-game
That's
series or something like
ridiculous.
that. So it's not a good sign. And if Robert
Mhm.
Williams is coming back, that's also not a good sign. So
Yes, I to quote Kevin, if when because when I talked to Kevin about this, he
mhm.
said if when not Robin Williams, different player, when Robert Williams comes back, that Celtics team is really scary.
Yeah.
Where
I
like that team possibly could go to the East, like in this division where we keep talking about Embiid, where we keep talking about Giannis, where we talk about the Heat, you could very well see the Sixers
yes.
just go all the way to the finals and nobody would talk about it.
I am very convinced. If you were to put okay, hold on. Back to the very beginning of what we just said with the injuries, you'd
Hmm.
put $100 on the Warriors to go all the way.
Yes.
You have to pick 3 now. You don't have to tell me which 3, but are you leaning a majority of those 3? So 2 of those 3 are from the East to win it all or from the West to win it all? With the injuries now.
Ooh. With
So
the end,
you already said Golden State. So if you add one more
yes,
West, then it's them. If not, then you're adding 2 East, and that's what I'm wondering right now. Who do you
I
think?
would lean East because I can't see that the Booker injury just worries me.
Mhm.
And I because we said it's 2 to 3 weeks, it's like, okay, that third week is the one that worries me the most. It's
So like
hard for me.
Memphis doesn't jump in there for you
No,
over anybody in the East.
I think Memphis will probably get like a West Coast Western Conference final, and that's about it.
Okay.
I look at the East, it's hard to deny it's hard to deny the Sixers, the Bucks, the Heat are really good with their depth. And now with like the Celtics healthy again, like I would take like if you were to do the top 4 versus the top 4, I would say Golden State's going to win 1, and then the others, I think
Are
I would
all
side with the East.
So you're saying if you were to tier it out
Mhm.
without there being conferences, it would be Golden State number 1, and then the next 4 are East?
Yes.
Mhm. You so
Bold
you don't
take, stupidity take, maybe.
No,
Like, I
I
know
don't
that
know, I don't know.
that's probably gonna bite me in the butt
Mhm.
later. Like how, Kevin said, "Oh, I'm worried about Toronto. We're gonna lose," and
I
I'm
was
already
too,
mad
though,
about
I'll
that.
admit that. I'll admit that I was worried about that too. I'm trying to think if like, I'm with you, Heat, Celtics, Bucks, 76ers are probably also there. I do wanna see what Embiid does in the next
Mhm.
game with this injury. That'll kinda temper or elevate my worries. Um, but you're right. I mean, I think the Suns, though, still sneak in there somewhere without Booker because of how deep and how talented that team is already. I just don't know which team I want to quote unquote slight to do that. And it might be the Sixers, honestly. It might be.
Yeah.
Um, but I would say there's somewhere I feel like the Suns should fit in. I just don't know where I'd want them to
But
fit
I
in.
think as a Sixers fan, you have to be happy with what you're seeing right now, especially
Yes.
since after game 3, like, that was the worst game that they've played, and they still won in the end, and
The
so
fact that I now, in my mind, feel like the Sixers have a quote unquote big 3 with Maxey is a win enough right now. And I know
Mhm.
there's no like, there's no wins unless it's the actual winning of the finals. But like knowing going forward that Maxi is what we think he is,
Mhm.
that's huge. And I think
Yeah.
that's a big part of it too. I know there's a lot of like, does it cool down? Is this the real deal? I think it's the real deal. I really do think it's the
I
real
think
deal.
it is as well. I think Maxi is having, I don't wanna say, like, the coming out party because I feel like we've been using that term a lot this postseason, but you're starting to see him, like,
There's a lot
come
of
to
guys.
his own.
You're not wrong with that though. There are a lot of guys with their coming
So
out party this
many.
year. Could you imagine if Maxi's mentality was Ben Simmons' mentality? It'd be, I mean,
Could you imagine if Ben Simmons said, "You know what I feel like learning how to do? Shoot
shooting.
outside
He
the
knows
restricted
the
screen."
problem. Oh, and this is my beef with ESPN. We could almost put this as my ball and fall, and that's coming up. By the way, I
Mhm.
my beef every time they show Ben Simmons when they're talking about him in the morning, because I can only watch for like 45 minutes before I go to the gym. They always show him taking jumpers in the gym. I was like, don't show me this. Like, I don't want to see him shooting.
No.
So it's I don't know why they do that, but they do that. Um, so Ballin' and Fallin', for those who don't know, it's our like NBA version of the stock market. We talk about good things and bad things throughout the week. So my ballin' this week, I'm gonna start with Steph Curry.
Mhm.
He was struggling from 3, quote unquote, struggling from 3 this year. He was down, but he was still shooting the 6th most this season. And what he did this season would still be a franchise record for 27 other teams in the NBA. How crazy is that?
Are you kidding me?
Yeah. Yeah, Steph Curry's that's the thing to bring up is like Steph Curry was still better than the average 3-point percentage this season, like in the NBA. But for him, it was down because of how good he's been. And he's still could have set, records for a bunch of teams in the NBA. So
Steph Curry is, he's remarkable, and, I remember I forget which game I was watching yesterday, but they played that, CarMax commercial with Steph Curry, Sue Bird,
sure.
and so they're saying, "Oh, go, you're the 1st pick or the 7th pick," and my wife looks at me and goes, "Wait, Steph Curry was the 7th pick?" I'm like, "Yeah."
Yeah.
"What?"
There was a lot of concerns with Steph when he was getting drafted.
Yeah, he
The
had paper
ankles.
ankles.
The
And
ankles were the concern. And
yeah.
honestly, you could yeah. So I mean, we could go down that whole
Oh,
route
yeah.
again.
I
So
think I'm
go
sorry,
ahead.
if finish your point.
No, you're good. You have a ball in?
Yes, I think my ball in right now, we'll stick with the same team, but it has to be Jordan Poole just stepping up when he needs to be. Like Jordan Poole, like, who saw this coming? And I know that you want to make your little pun of Splash Brothers, he's
Mhm.
Jordan Poole, but it's like, of all the people, it shouldn't have been Jordan Poole and a team that has like Andrew Wiggins that he was supposed to be really good. Oh, Kevon Looney is still on the team, as I made that joke. And
Mhm.
like 27 points, he was 3 for 5. He was just like this instrumental player, and he's been like that for like the past few games. It's like, "Oh, wow. This is now again scary types of depth when it comes to the Warriors." And you can't help but love it. 27 points in game 3, 29 in game 2. He's just been amazing. 86 points in the last 3 games. Jordan did it. It had 88 in 3 games. So you know what? From one Jordan to another, you can't help. If you're going to make a name pun, I'm going to make a name pun too.
And I'm all about it. I think Jordan Poole and Maxey have been honestly probably my 2 favorite stories from the playoffs this year because of their, quote unquote coming out parties and whatever you want to call it. Both of them, it's awesome. It's that there's no other better way to describe than just say it's awesome to see 2 guys stepping into a role and just absolutely dominating and exceeding expectations.
Yes, exactly. And I think we were kind of let me rephrase that. Jordan Poole was kind of at that point where it's like, all right, you are in your 4th year. We're kind of going to see like who you are. Like this
Time
is
to see it.
It's time to see who you are. It's like, all right, your contract's gonna be going up soon. Like, are you going to be this guy who's just going to go from team to team to team, playing on, maybe like minimal contracts or like a step above minimal? But now it's like, okay, he's going to be getting some money now because of just this playoff series alone.
Well, and I would say this season too. I mean, a little bit of, I feel like, no, it was this season that we saw him really, really take off when Curry got injured. And so I feel like the season, the playoffs really do it. I want to get to a point where on the podcast or maybe on social media, and maybe I'm off, debating of who you'd rather have going forward, Maxey or Jordan Poole. I think that would be a lot of fun. I keep bringing it back to Maxey because they're both the guys that are coming out right now in this coming out playoff party. But I think there could be a fun debate with that because the advanced stats and the actual stats are pretty close, except for Jordan Poole's effective field goal percentage is pretty much blowing out Maxey's just off first glance. So all right. So my fallen is actually going out to Jack Harlow, who, if you don't know, rapper Jack Harlow. He met Kawhi Leonard, right? And Complex Magazine was asking him about their meeting. And he said, I told him about the movie I'm preparing for, which is White Man Can't Jump. And he said that Kawhi's response was, he told me I need to get my layup package together because it is, quote unquote, ass. Which is fine. I mean, look, if you're going to be in a basketball movie, you got to have basketball moves. So hopefully Jack Harlow can get that stuff working on. Maybe he'll work with Kawhi on some moves. I don't know.
As long as he plays better than Philip Seymour Hoffman in Along Came Polly, I think we're all set there.
That was rough. That was bad.
White chocolate!
So what's your fallen?
First off, my Warriors knowledge, because I completely forgot that Kevon Looney was still on the team, even though he played 9 minutes yesterday, which is why I also forgot about his existence. My fallen is just the Minnesota Timberwolves as a whole. Like, the Minnesota Timberwolves, again, as I said earlier, there's very few franchises I allow their fans to clown the Orlando Magic, and the Minnesota Timberwolves are the other one. I get that you celebrated the win. I am all for that celebration. You haven't had much to celebrate as a Minnesota fan. Just in general, like your last playoff, like your last series when it was in 2003, there's a whole generation of fans who are just now eligible to vote, and they still haven't seen the Minnesota Timberwolves like win a playoff series. And you have a 25-point lead going into the 4th quarter, and you blow it, and you blow it bad. And of course, now you see the audio of Karl Anthony Towns saying, "Oh, we're in Minnesota now. We're all good." Hey, Cat, nah, man, you aren't good right now. And I think at that point, it reminded me a lot of the San Antonio Spurs when they blew the lead in Game 6. The series is done. They're just going to just give it to the Grizzlies now. There's no way the T-Wolves can recover.
Not scoring more than 12 points in 2 quarters. Like in the second quarter of that game, they scored 12 points. In the 4th quarter of that game, they scored 12 points. Like that. Oof. There's no other better way to describe it than just oof. That's not good. Oof. You were giving them, well, actually, they were having a fair amount of, I'm looking at the stats right now. They had a fair amount of fast break points too. I mean, what were they screwing up on?
I don't know. Well, here's the funny thing was that like I was watching watching a little bit at work, and then I saw the lead. I'm like, all right, I'm just gonna go home and I'll put
Mhm.
on I forget which other game it was. I put on another game. And so I went onto Twitter and I saw Charles Barkley. Oh, this is an embarrassment. I'm like, yeah, Memphis lost. You should that's the number 2 team. And then all of a sudden I hear Ernie Johnson. Oh, it's the comeback of the ages. Like, wait, what?
Mhm.
They somehow pulled that off?
I think there is a very, very long conversation to be had with Karl Anthony Towns' production in the playoffs. In that game you're talking about where they lost 95 to 104 with the massive comeback,
Mhm.
Karl Anthony Towns had 8 points and 5 rebounds. He shot 4 field goals.
I
He had more rebounds than he did shots.
I am slowly developing the take that I think Carl Anthony Towns is overrated. And I think like the biggest proof is one, this game, obviously, and the fact that he just can't seem to show up in big games. The play-in game, he choked. It's amazing that they still won that game considering how bad he was. And like this guy's supposed to be your star, and yet he just can't seem to come up big in moments. And like in big postseason moments, like regular season's one thing. Like if you're great in the regular season, cool. What about the postseason?
And
During the postseason,
I don't know if it's I don't know if the word's overrated, but I think there is a conversation to have of maybe he's not I don't even know what the
reliable.
I mean, reliable is probably a word you could use, but I'm trying to think like, like I think Kendrick Perkins said that he's not that quote unquote dog. Like he doesn't have that fight. And I don't necessarily know what word I want to use to convey that, but maybe he's not a number 1 guy on a team. Maybe he can be the number 2 guy, but he needs to be on a team with somebody that can take that number 1 pressure off of him.
So I'm trying to think of like the NBA equivalent to this. I always call it Eric Decker syndrome, where Eric Decker in the NFL, he could never be the number 1 receiver, but if he was your number 2 receiver,
He was
you're looking
he was
pretty
golden.
good.
Yeah. It might be a little bit of that.
Is it
It
Chris
might be
Middleton
that.
syndrome or Andre Iguodala syndrome?
It might be. I mean, it might be. I don't know, man. Iggy was pretty good when he was the star for the Sixers.
Yeah, he was good, but like the Sixers as a whole, like
They were
weren't
bad.
good. So
Yeah,
like,
you're right.
yeah, if Iggy's your number 1, that's not good. If he's your number 2,
Yeah.
you're looking at a good postseason run.
You might that might be it. That might be the description we're looking for then. Any other playoff thoughts? I mean, we hit most of the teams. I know we did want to circle back to the Jazz and Mavericks.
Mhm.
Jazz, you cannot lose to a Luka-less Mavericks team. You just can't. It's already not good vibes around the Jazz, and if you lose again to, I mean, what was it last year? Was it last year they lost to a Clippers team with no Kawhi?
Yep.
So you lose to a no Kawhi Clippers team. You lose this year to a no Luka Mavericks team. That's 2 really not good losses.
Yeah, I'm starting to think that that Donovan Mitchell's not going to be with the Jazz any longer. I
You
think
think
it's
it's
good.
Donovan?
No, I think not. I say I think it's Donovan. I think that like he's going to want out. Like
Oh,
it's not him just being like it's him that's being bad. It's because I mean we saw that Nuggets Jazz series 2 years ago where
that
he
was
was
wild.
just carrying that team.
Yeah.
Gosh, I would kill for another one of that series again. But it's like no matter how well they do, there's always somebody that's off, and I think he's just getting a little bit tired of it. I don't know where he would go. That's a different topic for a different show. But
I think
yeah,
If you're the Jazz though, and Donovan gives you any hint of that, if he hasn't already, I think if you're the Jazz, you tell him this team is yours. And if it's he doesn't want Rudy Gobert around because I know there's already been kind of rift
yeah.
problem conversations with that, then I think you have to be willing to move Rudy to make Donovan happy. Like I think Donovan's one of those guys right now that you don't just, oh, he's upset and he wants to go, let's trade him. I think you try to mend that if he is upset.
Yeah, I would say, yeah, I mean, definitely. Like, I would say also kind of good luck with that. Like, one, it's
Mhm.
Utah. No one wants to live in Utah. And then number
No,
two,
no,
like,
Post Malone lives there, dude.
oh, okay, never mind. You sold me.
I listen, I don't know. Post Malone loves himself some Utah. I don't get it, but he
I
loves it.
neat. And it's I feel like Donovan would probably like want to try to make a move to a team that could probably be a little bit more on the rise, or just let's just say the Knicks, because everybody likes to say that the Knicks are
Sure.
always going to get the next best star. I'm just making them happy. Knicks fans don't have anything to celebrate for the past 20 years.
Mhm.
Other than that, like the Jazz have just been. It's been. What can you say about the Jazz other than disappointing? Like
It
you
but it
like
but it's one of those things where it's like it's a good enough season that the disappointment of the offseason makes you consider thinking running it back, but we've seen it too many times with the Clippers when it was DeAndre Jordan, Chris Paul, Blake Griffins, like,
the
if you
Magic
wait.
with Dwight Howard.
Yeah, it's like, bro, how many times you gonna hit your head against the wall and realize it's not gonna break. You gotta move on, and I get it, because it'll always be one of those hindsight 2020 things, like,
Yeah.
who knows if maybe next year that's the year that it clicks and everybody's good. But as of right now, with a loss to the Clippers last year without Kawhi, a potential loss to the Mavericks without Luca, like letting Luca get to the second round without him even touching the court is insane.
Yes. Which,
Especially
by the way,
because especially because you have the two best players on the court, really.
yeah. By the way, honorable mention. I thought about making him my ball, and Jalen Brunson just stepping up these past two games without Luka Doncic. 31 points last game, 41 the game before. Like, he's just been great. And I feel like that, like you said earlier, like we mentioned Rudy Gobert, whenever he was off the floor, something's bad. Like if you're making him off the floor and then all of a sudden, hey, we're just going to keep attacking the paint because they don't have Rudy Gobert, then all of a sudden it's like, oh, hey, like we're scoring points, but at the same time, our paint is just completely empty. And
They're
that
just
was one
getting
of the big things I noticed for game 3.
Yeah, and you're just getting cooked when he's off the court, and so,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. It doesn't feel good, at least from an outside perspective looking in on the Jazz organization. It doesn't feel good.
Who survives next this post? If let's say this hypothetically, because I know you're trying to wrap up, so I'll make it quick. Who stays next year? Rudy, Donovan, Quinn Snyder.
Quinn Snyder kinda scares the hell out of me. Like, he terrifies me. So, like, I
He's
wouldn't
an
wanna be the.
aggressive chapstick user.
Yeah, well, yeah. Also, putting on the chapstick the way he was doing it looks a little suspicious. Looks like some stuff was going on, like, I don't know. I just put it out there, but I would say I don't think it's enough for Quinn to be gone. I don't think you move on from him. And I think if you're the higher ups in the Jazz organization, you pull Quinn and Donovan into a room and you say, "We're going to make this work. What do you guys want? Donovan, what do you want? How do we do it?" You know what I mean? And the only way I see Quinn potentially gone is if Donovan's like, "I don't want this coach here. I don't want Rudy here. We need to rehaul the whole thing." I don't know if that's how that conversation goes, but I think the quickest potential turnaround is see the haul that you can get back for a Rudy trade if you're going to do it.
And then
I think
Doc
that's
Rivers
the.
will get fired, and then he swoops right on in and takes the Utah job.
Sure, good. Send him. I don't want him in Philly, so I'm okay with that. The only thing I will give Doc credit for was the timeout that he took at the end of the game when Embiid almost screwed us out of the potential of at least getting a shot in the fourth quarter. That timeout, or the overtime, that
Mhm.
timeout was very clutch. And
Yes.
apparently he drew up that play. I don't know how much I believe that. I also don't necessarily like a play where your 7-footer is taking the three. We won. I get it. So we don't hate on it. But it's temper those
Nah, hate on
expectations
it.
a little
Nah,
bit.
hate on that play. Like, why is Danny Green inbounding? Like, your 3-point shooter, it's like, oh, we need a 3 to win. You know what we should do? Have our 3-point shooter be the one that inbounds.
So there's that. But
Yes.
either way, thank you again for listening to the Driving Dish NBA podcast. Chase, thank you for coming on.
Thank you for
We
having me on.
appreciate you filling in for Kevin as he is off this week. I will be out for potentially the next 2 weeks, depending on how the recording goes. Just know I will be watching the playoffs in Jamaica, loving
Maybe.
life, all inclusive. I will be drunk. That's how it's going to go. So Chase, your podcast, Bunkers Burning Hot Takes, they can check that out on any platform. Follow the Newbie Brothers, subscribe to the podcast platform that you're listening on. That way you get updated when we come out with new episodes. You can also find us on YouTube. We have a video version of the YouTube podcast. And that way you can see our smiling faces when we, while we talk about basketball, if you're so interested.
And while I get Kayvon Looney's name and team wrong numerous times.
We'll let it slide.